launch of this event of unclaimed funds. And while we were researching it, a couple of areas that came up. One was, what happens. So one was, of course, wills. What do you do with your money, and whether you take care of your money well enough that it goes to the right people and it doesn't land up as unclaimed funds. So obviously that was part of the decision. Right? The second issue was that what if you've done everything right and you're just not in a position to handle your own money? And when we started researching that, we were quite horrified to discover that there is no thought or provision about it in India at all. And in fact, after we, Akshay did a lot of research about it, I forwarded it to Gautam Patel because we discovered that in the Bombay High Court, most of the cases where there was adult guardianship that was given, most of the orders were his. Right? So I said, what is the way forward? Because it can't be ad hoc. I mean, frankly, Aditya's a lawyer, but we are scared of courts, okay? Anytime when you think about courts, you think lots of money, lots of time. And so if somebody is incapacitated, you think that someone has to go and get permission, file, then at the mercy of the court to say yes or no. So two facts, they say courts give priority to such cases and decisions are faster. But the big discovery was that every single case was of a family member asking for guardianship. So it was a sibling, parent or child who said, I am willing to look after the person. So the risk was less. Even then, if you look at each court order, courts are worried whether those people will be taken for a ride. There are lots of conditions to report. Then Akshay found a Kerala High Court judgment which had 12 points. But again, that's a motherhood statement, right? Nothing to say that this will happen. So Justice Patel then, okay, our experience was, and I'm sure many of you, Sailesh Mishra will definitely have a lot of stories since he deals with dementia and Alzheimer's. You have seen our case, what happened with a colleague of ours, that sometimes family members don't want to touch you. And this is a colleague who had money, enough of it. So what happens to them? Because now finally the family is paying.
Hello. My apologies. I'm sorry.
No, we've just started.
Right.
So I was just starting about why we are getting into this, right? So we discovered that the court also has not thought about these kind of cases. There was just one case in the Bombay High Court, which also again was decided by Justice Patel, and he happened to be a lawyer, and his colleagues went to the court. So it's all like within the family, within the court. They said, listen, we all know him, he was our senior, he's now suffering from dementia, let's do something about him. And they allowed a couple of lawyers who were his juniors to act as the guardians. So Justice Patel said that the only solution, he says the state has a duty to look after you. The state cannot say that we will wash our hands of people. But that's literally what happens. Nobody is looking after them. And unlike the work that many of you do, what we are doing is a lot of issues that concern people who have money, right? So who are not depending on state funding and saying that, look at it. So our point is that a humongous amount of money belonging to people like us is sitting with the government as unclaimed assets, because the government has made it so difficult for you to claim what is rightfully yours, which you may have inherited from your parents. Sometimes your parents have given up for multiple reasons because it's hard to. So it may be 2,000, 5,000 rupees that are sort of lying somewhere unclaimed. And you'll be really surprised. On Friday we met the governor, RBI governor, and he says that when they did a drive for unclaimed funds, they discovered that Udgam, when I told him Udgam doesn't work, he says, oh, they discovered my name, and apparently he had two deposits of 50,000 in an account in Orissa which he had forgotten about, and with interest it had become 3 lakhs, so he is a beneficiary, but none of us can even search the website. So I said that they've done it for you, but the rest of us, it's not easy. So my point is that I want to tell you all what kind of numbers these are. So I'll do a small 10 slide presentation, 5-minute presentation, and just to say that there's so much of money, and I think that money has to be used for people like us in different ways. And what those different ways are, I'll be looking for contributions. And the fact is that other countries have the same issues as us. It's not that they don't. They have found a way to deal with it. And it's only in India that our attitude is that if you have 2 square meals a day, the state has no responsibility to you. And if you're destitute, then then the state has a job, some old age homes and whatever. We know how badly run and badly kept they are. But the numbers we are talking about is really amazing. So we're just showing you this. We're on the first slide, right?
Yeah.
So this 2 lakh crore that I'm talking about is extremely conservative, okay? The number is probably minimum of 3 or 4, and I'll tell you why. And all this is unclaimed mutual funds, bank FDs, bonds, dividends, post office, and what have you. Next. So these are the kind of numbers. Insurance is likely to be 25,000. I'm putting an asterisk there because it's likely to be more. We don't know the correct numbers because there's no calculation. Mutual funds is 35,000 crore. Bank deposits is a pakka number in the RBI annual report, 78,213 crore. And this is money that gets transferred after 10 years to what is called the Depositor Education Fund. Before that, the money lies for 10 years as dormant accounts. Okay? And those dormant accounts, minus the biggest, which is SBI and Indian Overseas Bank, is already over 1 lakh crore. Yeah? So this is all money that is every year going to add to the 78,000 crore, and that's going to become bigger and bigger. RBI says, yes, we are worried, we want to do something. This is a number that he has done, 68,000 crore. Let me introduce Mr. Harsh Rupta.
Lower number, 82,000.
Sorry, 68,000 crore was our assessment. He then has done the number of what is the value of shares. When we did the launch, it was 82,000 crore. And now he says as the market's gone up, it's even bigger. And I'll come to that. EPFO, 27,000. Investor Education and Protection Fund is the 82,199 crore that we're talking about. Why is it unclaimed? Forgotten investments. You can't claim it. Sometimes they just make it so difficult that you finally say, okay, if it's just 5,000. I've had NRIs write to me to say that, we know you're writing this stuff, but if it's about 15,000 rupees or so, it's just not worth our time and energy to fight for it, because the banks make you run around so much, and they say it's okay. I mean, my parents' money, damn the bank account also. We don't even want to claim it. Let it remain open for eternity. We don't care. I don't think that's a correct situation, right? Because this money then is going to Government of India. If it's going to be utilized for people like us, it makes sense. And I think that's why that's the purpose of this discussion, that this is our money. This is not coming from the budget. This is not taxes. This is pure unclaimed funds, and it ought to be used for us, right? And the biggest problem is difficulty in recovering money. And the difficulty is because the government thinks that all of us are fraudulent. We're going to make wrong claims. And so they've made it so difficult that, our report, Akshay's got, and we did a survey also, he's got lots of examples that we've given about the ridiculous things, the hoops that they make you jump through in order to make get your money back. Succession, probate, if you've got both of that also, they'll ask you for something else. Processes are not common across people. We don't have a death registry. We don't have all of it. So now you have 5 financial regulators. So for each thing, you have to go to a different regulator to ask for it. So LIC, you'll have to ultimately go to LIC and IRDA, any insurance. Provident fund, different authority. Mutual funds, capital market, it's either Ministry of Company Affairs or SEBI, even that is divided. If it's a bank deposit, it's RBI. So I have filed a case in the Supreme Court to say, consolidate all of this. So Prashant Bhushan has filed it for me. The court on the first day was kind enough to say, very important issue. After that, they sent notices. banks and everyone else took time, and now it's Tariq pe Tariq. So, I mean, I've sort of given up any hope of anything sensible coming out in less than 5 to 10 years from now, right? So, which is why we need to push. So now we come to adult guardianship, because in the process of our research we discovered that the most vulnerable are people who, any of us, we don't know what's going to happen to us as we get older. If you have dementia, you have Alzheimer's, you're not, it can be any one of us. It doesn't have to be someone else. It doesn't have to be on your neighbor. We're talking about me, right? Because we don't know whether we're going to be in that boat. The government has no responsibility to us. There is no person who has authority. So as I was discussing a little earlier, till now we discovered that all the cases are those where a sibling, a parent or a child has gone to court and said, I want access to the funds to look after the person, and the courts have given it with some supervision. We are aware that Dignity Foundation was trying to help people, and they got into so much of trouble, right? They got into trouble because there are no laws, because we don't have a system. So even when you try to do good work, the backlash can be so severe that it would frighten any NGO to touch a person and help them unless the rules governing them are very clear. The police know about it. They can't just one fine day take a complaint from anybody and come and harass the person who's doing it. So people who are not able to operate bank accounts or lockers, who's going to look after them if they don't have a family? We are increasingly moving towards nuclear families, so they can lose access to their funds, or they can really be out on the street. Okay, so money is in the bank. Every single person who is responsible for helping out will say, we don't know what to do because there is no legal provision to take care of it, right? And the state has not decided what these legal provisions are going to be. And I have senior citizens who are doing all kinds of things, wearing a bracelet, writing something to say a bank manager should be able to operate a certain amount of funds. But all this is fraught with risk, because the extent of fraud that all of us see, we know that banks are sharing information. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to trust a banker to say, I'll write something in advance and give that, and you have access to my fund if something happens to me. So there is no system of guardianship. Right? Next. Yeah, there's no legal framework. I've got into that. There's no law that provides for it. So I had a discussion with a judge of the Bombay High Court, and after he studied all this, 2-3 factors that came up. One is that if you want someone other than family, frankly, even if you have family, okay? I mean, all of you who deal with people who have caregivers all the time, you know that caregiving is sometimes tougher mentally and physically than being a patient, right? So it needs funding. You need to take care of the needs of the caregiver. You have a reporting system, so nobody is talking about giving funds without a lot of paperwork. So every month you will have to report, you will have to keep accounts, you will have to give that. That needs assistance. You will need a chartered accountant to help you. Nobody talks about any funding being made available for any of that. So in fact, even the judge, his first question was, why do they need money? And I said, hello, I mean, even if it's a sister or a brother, they do need money, you know. They need money to hire caregivers. They need money for the chartered accountant. They need money for a lawyer to come and make presentations to the court. So if the person has money, it should come from the funds, and there should be a system. So we have no thoughts, we have only questions, and that's why, you know, we are hoping that some of you will have better answers than we had. But what I know is that there is no thought about this. And again, I'm repeatedly saying, we are talking about someone who has their own money. So they have money to pay for all of this. It's a question of who gets access to it. And that money can be not necessarily in a bank deposit. It can be to make a valid insurance claim because you have health insurance, but somebody has to fill out those forms for you before that money comes to you. You have money in the bank, or you have an asset, so you've run out of everything, but you're sitting in a property maybe which is worth 4 or 5 crores, right? So at some stage, somebody has to decide whether they move you to a smaller place or an assisted living place, but who takes those decisions on your behalf if you don't have immediate family, or even if you have family, are you going to be authorized to do it? And what we have noticed in the court decisions and lists that the Kerala High Court put is nobody wants to touch, permanent property. Okay, so bank accounts and things they are allowing you to use, but a decision like what to do with your property would be as good as the inheritance stuff. How many claimants, what heirs, succession, and so there may be people who are heirs and successors who are waiting for you to die because they know you're in that property, but will not want to come forward as long as you're alive. So they may actually want you to be miserable so that you're out of the way, because they will get access only later. And unfortunately, the courts have not touched on this so far, right? So we've talked about how many acts. So Akshay has done research. You had the Guardians and Wards Act, Hindu Minority Act, People with Disabilities Act. None of these, Mental Health Care Act, which I think has now been reworked, right? But none of them provide for these situations as far as we know. Kerala High Court also has acknowledged lack of legislation about it. Bombay High Court also says there's no legislation. So Justice Gautam Patel in fact suggested that you need to have a broader discussion, you need to talk to people who work in various sectors, and you guys need to push for a law, right? So we have gone so far, we thought we would take the next step and at least spread the word, and all of you are actually far more capable of doing the next step about what to do. I mean, we are there, we are happy to act as catalysts in whatever way we can, but we need to discuss what is the way forward. If possible, the idea behind today's meeting was, can we sort of come to some conclusions, maybe do a smaller task force, look at a paper, and then decide how we are going to push for this to take it forward, because it definitely is a need for the future. So this is about what I had to say. I thought what we can do is, I'm Sucheta Dalal, I'm the trustee of Moneylife Foundation. I thought let's introduce ourselves, okay? And we can have a discussion till 4:30. I'm sure we all want to also talk informally, so we have a break for tea and refreshments at 4:30. And then for the next half an hour or hour, we can look at some conclusions of what we want to do. Is that a fair way to do this today? Yeah? Okay. So this is all I have to say. And so can we go around from the right, which is said?
Namaskar, I am Abhay Datar, retired from Bank of Baroda as IT manager, and I am consulting at Moneylife on every Tuesday on banks, insurance, mutual fund issues.
Namaskar, I am A.V. Shenoy. I am electrical engineer by profession, worked with Larsen & Toubro. After that, I became a consumer activist, and for last few years, I have been associated with Moneylife Foundation, giving advice on the consumer issue.
Hi, I'm Akshay Naik. I'm the project director for Moneylife Foundation.
Hi everyone, my name is Nishit Kumar. I'm the founder and managing director of Center for Social and Behavior Change Communication. We essentially develop SPCC-based interventions on a variety of issues, whether it is gender or it is behavior change on social matters like child marriages, safe driving, wash, and so on. That's what we do.
What's SPCC, sir?
Sorry?
You said SPCC based.
Yes, SPCC is Social and Behavior Change Communication. SPCC is at the heart of all interventions in the development sector worldwide, whether it is HIV or polio or TB, or basically it is behavior change. That's it. COVID, appropriate COVID behavior is the only solution to prevent spread of COVID. There is no cure for it.
You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Neha Shah and I'm representing Dignity Foundation.
Dilip Maudi, fan of Moneylife, and I'm in my capacity as one of the registered users of lasting power of attorney in UK very recently. So I had some experience in the processes and what's involved and what is the scope of it and things like those. That's why I'm here.
Hi, I'm Rekha Kurula. I worked with NGO sector for 22 years. Right now, heading a company in legal tech, helping people write wills and their testamentary practice for people.
I'm Nasreen Rustam Fram. I retired from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. I have been associated with aging studies since about 2011-12.
Hi, I'm Javed Sheikh. I'm CEO of Nominees Foundation, and I specifically look into helpline for the past 3 years, and I'm also working on dementia and Alzheimer's, in depth. So I will follow with all the various things which you do. These are 2 specific projects I am championing at Nominees Foundation. So helpline is something when I come across many such cases of guardianship and various problems which I can share in the course of the day. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm Veena Barera. I'm a gerontologist and also a trustee of an NGO which looks into elderly. I'm a visiting faculty of Fortis for the gerontology course.
Hi, I'm Aditya Jogi. I'm an associate in Jogi Matthew and Associates, a law firm that looks at securities law specifically. I'm also interested in the testamentary practice. I helped found William Moore, which is what Ms. Rekha could have talking about. And I'm interested in this discussion.
I'm Vijay Onde. I'm attached to Federation for Senior Citizen Organization. We are very much interested in senior citizens protecting their interests after retirement. If money goes somewhere, comes back, we don't know. So they have to protect because they are not aware of what is happening with their account. So they have to be very careful. Unknowingly, money goes to different places which earned by them in their lifetime.
Bharat Isolvar, retired from Reserve Bank of India, and I am associated with PESCOM. PESCOM is a Federation of Senior Citizens Organization, and we have met many times. I'm Shailesh Mishra. I'm from Silver Link. We are working with senior citizens and dementia. I have a dementia home, and I come across so many cases. But what we do is we take precautions to make a will or we do it beforehand when people come. There is less trouble, but we have cases where there are problems.
My name is Sai Geeta and I am from Center for Lifelong Learning, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and I have worked with Professor Nasreen. That is how I got interested in this whole area of aging. We also offer a diploma program in gerontology at our institute.
Namaste. My name is Dr. Ketna Mehta. I'm the founder, trustee and editor of an NGO called Meena Foundation. We rehabilitate the poorest rural and urban friends with spinal cord injury, and they don't have any money.
I am Jamshed Mistry. I practice as a counsel in the High Court and in the Supreme Court. I'm supposed to be online, but I think this is more important today. I'm also the founder of a very interesting network. It's called the International Legal Alliance, where we have lawyers from about close to 150 countries, all joined together in the virtual space. And situations like this, wherever there is a requirement for a change in the law and bringing new laws into practice, is something that of course, we're always working with Moneylife. I was on the committee a while ago.
Hi, I'm Harsh Rumta, ex-banker like many of you, although you should not hold that against me. I run a startup that did loans, and so all these calls that you get also from there. Reformed sinner now. I run an investment advisory practice professionally, but I'm very active generally in all areas. I'm part of, I was the chairperson and now the director of Association of Registered Investment Advisors. That's a Section 8 not-for-profit company which basically works at elevating the standards of our profession. Among the things that we did was a white paper written by Mr. Pramod Rao way back in 2020 on reimagining nominations, making succession smoother and simpler. And I have a very personal connection with today's topic, which is adult guardianship. My father basically suffered from a stroke in 2016. He survived for 6.5 years after that. And we passed through all kinds of things. I mean, my father was a widower. There was no issue of money, but there was no way to access it because it was all in his name. He was a stickler for everything. He had the will in place. He had nominations. So no problems, right? The only issue is till he is alive, he cannot access that money. He himself, and I've seen these problems upfront. I mean, studied the Shobha Gopal Krishnan case, the Kerala High Court, the Bombay High Court decisions. Now we do that for our clients as well. It's something, with a room full of lawyers here, okay? It is, the kind of jugaad that you have to do to use your own, and it is very open to fraud. You have to be, it is clear that it is open to fraud, okay? The same things, if somebody else had done, it is open to fraud, okay? The jugaad, that is the problem with jugaad, right? It can be misused as well. This is a burning topic, and for me it is personal because apart from my father, my grandfather spent the last 2 years of his life, lying comatose. One of my other grandfather's brother, we have a family history, I'm very worried. Okay. So I've done all the jugaads that I can do, but I would prefer a legal solution.
So I think everybody's been very modest in their introductions. I know that all of you have a vast body of work behind you, and even Harsh, it's frankly one of the things that came up is that the process of making nominations and things a little easier has happened at SEBI. It's still in the process of being tested. We are now pushing other regulators to do it, but that was largely because of the work they did from their NGO and the fact that Mr. Rao has moved from there to SEBI and is personally handling it. So we try to tell the RBI, we've spent 5 years telling the RBI, have strict standard operating procedures so that this is the set of rules and no other. And the big elephant in the room for any change that is people friendly is fraud. Okay? So as soon as a bureaucrat opens his mouth and says, "Yahan pe to bahut fraud hoga," then you can forget about anything even halfway sensible happening because of fear of fraud. And one of the things that we are discussing as a part of this report and the experiences is that fraud is inevitable. It happens all over the world. You have to control it. The whole insurance industry works on that basis, that you have to make those payouts. That's why people insure themselves. There will be fraud. That fraud has to be kept below 5%. You have to budget for it. And then you have to go after the fraudsters criminally and take action. That cannot, the possibility that there's going to be fraud can't, make the life of 100% of the people miserable by having such tough and impossible rules that nobody gets a guardian. So yeah, you will have occasional cases, 1 in 1,000 maybe, where the guardian turns out, you read those stories all the time in the papers. It's only when man bites dog, it comes in the paper. So the chartered accountant has forged the will and taken a 10 crore flat in his own name. So that's bound to happen, will happen, but we are hoping that that will be below 5% and that 95% of the people are going to benefit. So I'm going to leave it open now. Whoever wants to start and have suggestions on how to move forward.
Individually, all of us doing work individually, so nobody's going to go anywhere. Like I personally deal with so many cases, headline cases which are related to families, and so I've come across cases wherein an entire society ganged up to fleece the money of the person in question. So this fraud thing will always happen. Intention is something which you cannot trust of anybody. Okay, but then if we have to come at a common platform, tell the government to do something which is very impactful, it has to be one single voice. Okay, we together. Like for example, I am championing the cause of dementia, and I have been running from pillar to post, national health mission to the municipal corporation. Last week, the corporation said that dementia is not in a priority list, not in the center's priority list, not even in the state's priority list, right? So if dementia is not in the list of priorities of the government, then obviously this is something which should be, not heard of, because if there is anything related to finances, then the court probably refers JJ Hospital to do a certification, and only after JJ Hospital certifies. This is something related to that. I read a case where this there was an order passed and the JJ Hospital had to certify that this person is dementic and his or her bank account can be, managed by X person. So there is no, like as you mentioned, there is no form of law which can be followed, and everybody is fighting individually. Like you are fighting individually, we would be fighting individually. So probably if we draft something, like with your under your leadership, if you draft something and continuously follow up with the government on an aggressive pattern. The thing is that if you believe that just because we are an NGO, people take us very lightly, or granted, or not serious. Like when I talk to the government authorities, I talk as if it is my own cause. So when I went to the National Health Mission, they said we know everything about dementia. I asked them, so what have you done? Nothing. So it is time that we start questioning the government aggressively. I mean, I would put it this way, with some authority. What I feel personally, NGO, it's a back foot kind of a thing. And then there are consequences. We are all scared of consequences. Somebody might file a case of cheating or some kind of thing, so who will go to jail?
On income tax, there is a legal restriction on them sharing data with any other.
No, they won't share. When you say you're an heir, at that time you should be able to get. So
it's not allowed under the income tax.
So we have to change it.
Yeah. So
Our
the
whole
laws
point
would
is
have
about
to
changing the law.
The laws would have.
No, so we want to see with what checks and balances can the laws be changed. So our whole discussion is that, okay, we'll always come to a roadblock saying the law doesn't allow it today. Yeah, okay, but let's look at what the rest of the world is doing and whether the law can be changed to make it work for people. So that is our idea.
Yeah, so it actually prohibits it. I mean, it's not that it does not think about it. It says that no information can be shared. I mean, there are, I think, the standard national security and those kind of exceptions, but otherwise it's not allowed to be shared. But you're right, it can be changed.
It's
it can
it's
definitely
not allowed
be
to
changed.
be shared under RTI as far as I know. So under RTI they don't allow it. But if a successor having got a probate or a will comes forward, then I mean, Aditya, you should tell us, also whether it's a possibility. So I'm sure it's not allowed, we'll study that. But, with adequate checks and balances, why should they not let a successor? Now you've proven yourself, or we are just two siblings who are inheriting. We're both going together and making a joint application. What are we asking? We are only saying we want a full snapshot of what we are inheriting. We want everything. We want to know if there's an insurance policy. We want to know if there are bonds, mutual funds, some property bought in Shimla or somewhere else which we don't know about because we're living in Bombay. You have access to everything. Give it to us. I don't see why legally that, because this is not personal information. The person is dead, right? So a lot of things have to change after the person is dead. And who is asking for it? Do you have a legal right to ask for it? I mean, then you should be in a different position from an RTI applicant who is saying, I want to go after XY. So those are rejected. That I agree that personal information can't be given under RTI. But I don't see why it should not be. It's worth studying that as a.
I would say false suspect of the same thing Mr. Rupta was talking about. A lot of fraudsters will then get fake airship certificates and say that, please give me this data, and then siphon it off and sell it off for other purposes. So even if the person is not dead, if I'm able to go and say, okay, this airship certificate, give me everything, what regulation is there to ensure that income tax will double check that? So that is one. The second is that even though you're saying that personal data should not be shared under RTI, and RTI does place that prohibition, and the Income Tax Act does place a prohibition on the amount of data is restricted to be shared. You also have to factor into account the Personal Data Protection Act, which has come recently, the 2023 Act. So the data that you're sharing, not only of the person, but also say of the person's assets as an heir or as a potential heir, is something that has to be
No,
very
it won't
regulated.
be potential. The person's dead.
Yeah.
You're
Even if
coming
the
as a
person is
claimant.
dead,
No, you're coming as a claimant after having run through the hoops of proving that you got your succession certificate. See, because if you start questioning a fake succession certificate, then none of us can make any claims at all. Because we are depending on a succession certificate or a probate or a heirship certificate. I mean, some certificate that you get ultimately is held valid by banks and others, right? So if that is there, then I don't see why the data should not be.
So again, controlling that information on how succession certificates are issued or how heirship certificates are issued addresses the first part of your problem on data sharing. So if your problem with data sharing, say under the Income Tax Act, on why the income tax authority should not share that data with me, should first have the assumption that the person asking for the information is legitimate.
So when we talk about a new law, we should take care of that. So we will definitely say that only a person who is a legitimate heir, proven, is asking, that too only of a deceased person, not of a. So that is for the deceased. But for adult guardianship, it's a different. We are not going into that at all for adult guardianship.
Now, before I would suggest before you go into the adult guardianship part, how to prove you're an heir if a person has died intestate means you also have to prove it under the various personal laws that exist. So suppose you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu, then not only do you have to prove you're an heir as per those personal laws, you will also have to prove that it has happened legally. So tomorrow, say you might be a karta and there might be beneficiaries. You have to show that not only are you a beneficiary as per so and so act, you will also have to prove it before court. So tomorrow, let me give you an example.
No, you're talking about for adult guardianship, not for succession.
For both. For adult guardianship as well as succession.
He's saying that before adult guardianship, the issue of succession should be sorted out. Am I right? Is that what you said?
So that is something that can be taken on.
So in case there is already a will that help further, or this problem will only arise when there is no will? When the person is died in
So again, if there is a will, then you have to first verify the will. You have to verify that this person
And
is
probate.
a beneficiary. Probate. That's your first 3 steps. And after that you get your heirship succession certificate, which then you submit. To say that, listen, I'm genuine heir. So to restrict this entire flow of information, you have to first regulate. You have to first show that the will is registered, to show that these witnesses exist. And this is where the problem lies, that the court has to then investigate into who is the witness, is there a probate, has the bank conducted the probate. So your first step has to sort of be done properly before we move on to the information.
So just taking cue from what he said. See, let's not only talk about your main cities. Look at other places. Look at smaller places. Right? Your airship, probate, etc. Smaller courts, less number of people, much quicker. So it's not that it's. We're looking at an all India solution, right? So yes, in Bombay, probate testamentary department has one of the largest amount of caseload. I think we really need to. Somebody needs to file a PIL and say that listen, we need to appoint people to get that done. I think if that is done, a lot of caseload will come down. And, that's one. But on the guardianship aspect, let us look at today. If you have now advanced medical directives like a living will, which is available, which is being interestingly accepted by the court in so many ways, then what we really need, as my friend rightly said, is an all India Act. The problem is this: it is based upon community, it is based upon religion. You need to, for minors, for persons with disability, things are slightly better. They're not, but at least there is a little bit of clarity. You have the National Trust Act for a few types of disabilities. Okay. But why is this not happening for a general? I'll give you completely different example. For organ donation, okay, when the problem for domicile was an issue, all we did was go to the Supreme Court saying domicile is an issue, whether you're a High Court judge or an IAS or an IPS officer, you're going to face the problem in the state in which you are, transferred to. Next day, go to the ministry. 2 months later, Man Ki Baat, Prime Minister Modi says, go ahead and do whatever. That's the kind of solution that you need. That will be my that's how. I mean, put it together, bring it out, get as much public, and then move it to the Supreme Court and get it resolved in one hearing. See, this is what it is. Let the law ministry also apply its mind. I think it's a very, very good case from whatever I've been hearing, that we need one law for guardianship. And Guardians and Wards Acts also has come into for minors, how's that evolved. All that has taken time because there were conflicts. I think that needs to be sort of put together.
I would like to add to your point regarding the minors. Let's look at how minors are taken care. Like senior citizen as good as equivalent to a minor once they pass age, they are not independent. So, for example, you get a call in Childline, the case is passed to a particular police department or an NGO. They take it, they investigate the thing. Then they go to, if the case is required to be referred to the Child Welfare Committee, Child Welfare Committee takes a decision and present it to the court and do the necessary, whether the child has to be sent to a home or whatever it is. So similar, situation can be analyzed for senior citizens also. Because if the distress call comes from a senior citizen, police register the case, then it is referred to expert committee, and the committee decide whether to put up to the court. If there are assets, that has to be decided by the court, and a home or a care facility has to be. So we already have models which is good, where children are taken care, minors are taken care. We can take cue from there and apply that for senior citizens, because the situation is almost the same.
But what's likely falling from here, and I'm writing to her because she's put it all together, and rightly so. The problem is with airship, with all this, why do we always require the involvement of a court of law? See,
it's a national level issue. It's
yes.
not, so we need.
No. So again, that's the thing. So we have to only because if it's verified through a court of law, can't we get it done through another system? Because today, courts are in serious difficulty.
But as long as we are governed by the personal laws,
That-
we need
yes.
court intervention. We cannot jump that process.
But again, there's nothing to prevent something new evolving out.
So the something new would be the London example. But before that, do you want to mention just one little point? He's worked with Childline, so practically what happens inside he would be able to fill us in on. Just one little big difference, okay, which is that minors usually have no assets. And for adult guardianship, we are talking about a person who's worked his life. So I know one person who's finally moved away to the US to be with his daughter after agitating about this for 5 years, because he has lots of assets. I mean, he is a very successful CEO of a company, probably worth 50-100 crores. And yet he says, every day I live here after his wife passed away and the children are abroad. He says, something happens to me and I, fall on the road with vertigo or something. I don't know who will take me to what hospital if I don't recover, if I get into a coma. I mean, I may die destitute in spite of having all this money. So that's a big difference.
So the difference is for living will, there is a committee decide, the doctors decide.
That's the only, big discussion point that we're making. That we're talking about people with assets. We always think dementia, Alzheimer's and all that. We're not talking, so when we talk to government, when we talk to retirement homes also, you won't believe it, when they put up this committee, I had such a tough time at each stage making them understand, let's separate two sets of people. One, those who don't have money, where it is the government's duty to look after you. You don't have a choice, there is no discussion, you have to, and you're not giving enough money that's another matter. I want to talk about rules for people who have money. Even then, you're making it difficult for them. So, we need clarity. We're not asking for money. Those who don't have money, it's the government's duty, right? So, here also, I feel when it comes to minors, it's the government's duty. They have to do it. And mostly minors, with exceptions, will not have money. So, do you see a parallel, Nishit?
Yeah, I'd like to make 2 or 3 points. I ran the child helpline operations for 11 years across the country. And during that period, 10 years we took on a case called the Anchorage case, which went from the Sessions Court in Mumbai to the Supreme Court. At the Sessions Court, we won the case against the 2 British pedophiles. It was the first case victory of its kind on child sexual abuse. But there was no law. The entire country had no law excepting for the Goa Children's Act, which had a one sentence in the Goa Children's Act on sexual abuse. But no act was there. At the High Court, the Chief Justice called us to his chambers and told us that I'm acquitting them even though the testimony has been proven to be valid, the children's testimony. And he told us, this is the recommendation, he said, I suggest you go to Parliament. This was a suggestion given because it was on law. We then went to the Supreme Court and got the victory that we wanted. But 6 years I put into drafting a law. The first draft of the law is what I helped develop. And we took it past consultations across the country. We had 2 clauses in that. One was on mandatory reporting and one was on shifting the burden of proof to the defense. And this was fought by lawyers and doctors across the country. It went to a parliamentary committee. It was passed to the Rajya Sabha in 2012 in January, but the Lok Sabha appointed a committee and put down pass the law. In fact, I used to attend all the parliamentary committee meetings and I was told that, Nishit sir, this sentence has to be told in the meetings. ये सब भारत में होता नहीं है, सब foreign country में होता है, इसके लिए कानून क्यों चाहिए? Even though the 2005 report of the Government of India said that 52% of our children, boys and girls, have faced some kind of sexual abuse by the age of 10. 52%, 1 in every 2 children. There's a government report that said that. So I know the problems of getting a law passed. In order to get that law to pass, I was invited on the first episode of Satyamev Jayate to tell the country why we needed the law. And we got 2 million SMS messages sent to the PMO. And in August of that year, 2012, the Lok Sabha passed a law. It was signed on 14 November. But that law and another act related to children, which is the Integrated Child Protection Scheme. India, when the Ministry of Women and Child was separated from the Ministry of Social Justice in 2004-5, there was no consolidated act, the kind that Sir is talking about, which brings all aspects of it and which might provide a separate, not just a court infrastructure. And I spent a year with the Ministry of Women and Child writing the Integrated Child Protection Scheme. So given that background, I have this submission to make to all of you. Whenever we talk about a law in India, it cannot be just a law because you're literate, you're illiterate, you have all kinds of people here. I said religion, all kinds of communities across the country. So I'm giving you my suggestion of a framework for what needs to be structured, along with the law. One is, of course, a law, and that has to cover the fund's asset management and the processes. It has to cover rights. It has to cover the court processes and timelines. And finally, it has to also define the data bank and repositories. We're talking about a central repository. And finally, it has to look at interventions for senior citizens, such as senior citizen homes. There are a variety of models of homes in the country which operate. He has a model. There are a variety of models. I remember I was working on the project for the Dignity Foundation in Nerul, which was set up. I worked on that model. So, there are a variety of models. This is the law aspect of it. The second is, you cannot do a law like this without defining an intervention services model. Now, what do intervention services require? And it doesn't have to be intervention by an NGO, which will happen in cases anyway. But this is intervention by the state. What it needs to cover? It needs to cover awareness, creating awareness across the population on fraud, on financial aspects, asset management, wills, and registration, why you must register in the central repository. You know. Second, you need to have some kind of an access facility such as a helpline, you know, multimedia helpline which people can access, you know, at all times. You might need to have financial services, you know, intervention. You might need to have legal services intervention, you know, and you might need to have certification processes for medical requirements. Now, this intervention model needs to be defined so the government knows what to back up the law with. I mean, you have a law, but you will need that model and it must go together. That's why I mentioned the Integrated Child Protection Scheme, because that brought together everything from JJB, all the processes for children, shelter homes, observation homes, you know, orphanages, everything was covered in that. So it was a mechanism for the JJ Act to operate in. So that is what that thing did. So this framework is what you must actually work towards and go to the government. That's my submission.
Thank you. Excellent. Really important points.
Even we discovered during the POCSO drafting of the POCSO Act and how it worked, we found that there are various elements which are there in different acts. Now 375 and 377 at that time IPC, you know, we had a huge issue with, because the Chief Justice of the Bombay High Court said 375 will not apply. At that time it was pre-Nirbhaya, pre-Justice Verma Committee. So it was penal-vaginal intercourse. Only that was 375. And 377 was unnatural. So these two acts would not apply in a case where the children gave testimony that these two Britishers, they put their penny into the mouths of children every night in the home. And they said, no, this. So we said, I mean, you can't treat this as unnatural sex. You can't treat 375. We were told, sorry, we can't. Go to Parliament. So we found that many such things were there. Shelter homes, for example, existed for children, but there was no mechanism. Now, in Maharashtra, for example, at that time, the pendency for inspection by the state government was 6 years. That means you registered, and 6 years later, the state government came and did a inspection of the shelter. So the shelter home was there, but there was no overall regulation. So we felt that if we put the ICPS, it provides a mechanism to the center and the states to come together and make it uniform. So that's why I feel it's a necessary process.
So with due apologies to our friends in the legal field, but at the grassroots, what our NGO NINA Foundation has faced, 85% of our people who get a spinal cord injury, which is a permanent, incurable disability, and that is caused due to road traffic accidents. In a road traffic accident, like even the latest India Today is all about, you know, our highways and how killer highways they are. There is no registry in terms of number of people who get injured. We know how many people died, but not about this. Whatever the laws are pertaining to spinal cord injury, let me openly mention, none of them work. Compensation 50,000 at the time of the injury. The hospital will not enact it. The Ayushman Bharat that you can have a free surgery because you are an orange ration card holder. Nothing of the kind works. So when you talk about a law, and plus anyone who's got a quadriplegia, which is neck down, right? Even the speech is impaired, right? And their fingers, their hands, no movement. Now in such cases, it's just the thumbprint, whether for your banking and such things that work. Even people, males who have a spinal cord injury are abused by their wives, by their family members, caretakers. They have no recourse. We have such examples where they keep going to the court and the wife's lawyer already knows that, you know, how to delay the case because all these are known, and the judge says, why should I speed track? You know, the husband was in agony because the father was stabbed. He says, like, I can't stay in such a situation. So he says, are you the president of India? These are the kind of cases that I'm not only talking about, you know, the negative aspect of the legal framework, but how tough the situation is at the grassroots level. So if there is something more than a law, which empowers the human being who's comatose or unable to take decisions and has assets and would like recovery. I think let's put our heads together to, enable that.
Sometimes it's going to be no recovery, just caregiving to the rest of their, for the rest of their life.
Yes, absolutely. But the heart is beating, they're able to use their brain, they're able to, still execute their past. But it's helplessness.
I think there are two aspects. One is the prevention. I think we're missing the point. But we are talking about something happens to me, then what? But we also can prevent. For example, in my home, what we do when somebody comes with dementia or they are going to dementia or they are very old, we ask them, do you have a will? Do you have power of attorney? Do you have nomination? We try to see they have everything placed together before they come in. Because there might be one child, there might be siblings, who will pay and what they will do. Sometimes people come, they take the parents outside for signatures. So we have to make a note. Who is taking him for signature? A daughter, B son, C other daughter. And for what purpose? So if we prevent, if we have will, power of attorney, nomination, everything will place, the trouble will be lesser. That's one thing I think we should do. And that's what we should take awareness.
Yes, absolutely. The prevention is very critical.
Very difficult for law. And in India we have so many laws like Mental Health Act. There are so many provisions, you already mentioned here. But I think what point we make is the tribunals are already there. Senior Citizen Mental Health Act tribunal is already there. It's looking after senior citizens abuse and property related issues. And we had a lot of intervention on the NGOs. There was something which is not happening. So we put an amendment. There is an amendment pending in Parliament in 2019. Act is of 2007. So this tribunal, we don't have to go to court. There is a district collector. And within 6 months, it has to give a decision. It's a very simple, fastest way to go.
In 90 days.
90 days. So can we plug that into the Citizen Act?
So I have a question for you. So Senior Citizen Maintenance Act exists, I'm aware of it. But that is usually to put pressure on a child, right? That you have to look after your parents.
Only one aspect.
So
Other
I
aspect,
think whoever is the legal heir, probably,
Correct.
they have to take care of the senior citizen.
so the other aspect also, if there is nobody, government should take care. There are many things into it.
Correct.
Yes.
So-
And then also, if I have gifted my property, more relative, it might be no child left.
You can get it back.
So, we have to give back.
Right. So, but in incapacitated adults that we are talking about, there may be nobody who's coming to make a claim, and what is worse is there will be nobody to make a claim as long as that person is alive. There may be a lot of people making a claim once he's dead because they want the assets. So that doesn't fall into this. So what is your thought about what should we ask? I mean, after hearing Nishit, I think we're very clear about what kind of framework that is required. We'll have to fit in all this. We'll also have to look at how it's working. So, I keep pointing to Dilip Modi, but he's just opened our eyes to the fact that this guardianship thing exists in the UK. Now, we have not had the time to examine whether it's working, because a lot of times most countries have lovely websites and, the Office of the Guardian, how to appoint someone. Is it really working as well as they claim? We will need to get data.
In terms of generalities of whether it works or not, but it's been in operation since 2009, and after COVID, because of the digitalization in being online, my own personal experience is that I don't need to run from place to place when I'm incapacitated, because my guardians or what they call the deputies are already aware of my power of attorney given to them. They have got a code and an online registration, each of the deputies.
So just to step back, you have actually registered and you got a...
I've registered it. It is with the Office of the Public Guardian, and if something happens to me, all my wife has to do probably is to inform my daughter or whoever is the guardian, and they themselves now can approach the Office of the Guardian, or they don't even have to. They've got an online registration. They can look at my power of attorney that's being issued to them, and they don't even have to give the copy to the various institutions, be it on the health side or on the property side or the banking side. All they have to do is to actually refer them with a code, like we do with our Aadhaar card. We don't have to give them Aadhaar card anymore. We just will give them a code, and whoever the institution is likely to go and look at it and say, yeah, Dilip Modi is fully compliant with Aadhaar card. And that's all that is required. So once that is done, they are legally obliged to follow the instructions of the deputy or the guardian that has been nominated, and that's it. From then on, they'll operate the account, they'll operate the fund, they'll operate anything that is required as if I was doing it myself. They've got the full power, full access to everything. So the good part of it is that it's all in place and it's all being able to manage very, very quickly. Unlike, let's say, the enduring power of attorney, which was the predecessor to it, where at the time of incapacitation, the guardian has to go and approach the court to say Dilip Modi is no longer capable of doing that. The court then authorizes, only then it comes into being. That takes a little bit of longer time to achieve that, like I think it's happening here. But now it sits with the Office of the Public Guardian online, and therefore lot quicker. And each of the guardian, if I got more than one or two or three, depending upon what kind of decision making I'm empowering them. For example, for property and finances, either of them, severally or jointly can deploy that one. If in the case of switching off the button in the ICU, right, I require both of them to agree before it happens. In the case of other things like whether I want to go in a home or whether I want to stay at my in a assisted area of living, whether I want to keep my dog with me until I die, all little things. So there are preferences and there are instructions within the actual document itself that you can list out as to how fine-tuned you want to do it. Those are the good parts, like the enduring power of attorney or power of attorney or what you call a durable power of attorney. All those steps were there. But LPA has actually now provided a lot more flexibility. And I think some of the things, although I don't understand all of it, I'm not a professional, I've not worked like that, so I may have got it misunderstood. But what I find is nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with sect, nothing to do with that. It is mainly saying you are a human being and you are employing somebody, you are nominating somebody to look after because he or she is willing to do that for you. And as soon as that happens...
But when you did all this, did you seek some counseling or some guidance? I mean, these are difficult decisions.
Well, there were difficult decisions when I started it, but then I sat with the good thing about UK is that there is so much information available from NGOs, it's unbelievable. You can spend months and months reading about it. But I tried to chew over as much as I could. Plus I got a financial advisor over there which helped me a little bit, at least on the finance side, and my own views about how I want to live and where I want to live and things like those ones. Based upon that one, the form itself is very, very simple.
That's all.
But the good thing is, along with the form, there are so many instructions. And if I give one example, if you want to state where you want to live or how you want to live after you're incapacitated, you can instruct your deputy to say, I wish to live in my own home. I will not go into a care home or assisted home anywhere, period. I wish not to be given a bath. I prefer to have a shower. I wish to have my cat living with me as far as possible, unless I have to be moved to a care home because the medical profession says so. So there are different examples even. And if you got time and effort, read through all those things. There is age group, there is a, living, living in comfort, and there are, NGOs galore there. And you got to have the time to read, and the instructions are very, very simple in plain English. So I was very impressed. The only thing I would say, the time between filling up the form and getting it registered, it took me about 7 months.
So one more question. If suppose you had ticked that I want to live in my own home as far as possible and with my cat, but you don't have that much of resources, then
well, that's difficult.
Who makes that decision?
The deputy has to manage within the asset that you are left behind. Otherwise, it goes into what you call the social services group. Once you run out of money, like you said here, like for the children, that the state has to take care of it. Similarly, over there, people without the resources you eventually end up with social services, and they may have to be then moved to a home, caring home, or they may have to do things which are of a lesser standard than if you have the asset that you are able to capable of providing it. But so it moves from, I think, your own assets to a typical example would be, I think, that so long as you got your own home and the mortgage is paid off and you may have a reverse mortgage to pay for the expenses, things like that. Once you run out of it, obviously, then it becomes a case of social care.
So I echo with some of the things that have been already discussed by Shailesh and sir. See, there are 2-3 things. I think we need to define what is incapacitation first of all. I hear that we are working, this discussion is for senior citizens, somebody who's in good condition, maybe somebody who's disabled, and another set of people who are incapacitated. So are we considering incapacitated people as part of disability? Because disability is a wider term. It includes physical, mental, emotional, all sets of things. So can we consider incapacitated people as part of that disability? And if so, then taking on from what he spoke about National Trust Act, that gives some ray of hope. And because it's not a law, it's not a court of justice where people, struggle to go and appear, to fight for their cases. This is one simpler way. I think this is also part of the Senior Citizen Act. A way where we can, have something to push forward to the National Trust because it comes directly under District Collector. And that's a simpler way to approach also. It's better to go to a district collector and the office rather than go to a court, to the judges who are not aware of all these things. They do not understand, this is my personal case, they do not understand what disability, who are mentally disabled, they are not aware of the categories that falls into disability. Okay, so it's to that level that they don't understand. I've gone through the Guardianship Act, I've gone through Mental Health Act, but there was no understanding of this. The lawyers, the courts, and this is not of Bombay, this is outside Mumbai, a smaller place. So that's one thing, awareness is not there. So I have not studied the Mental Trust Act fully to understand whether dementia, Parkinson's is part of that disability also. If one goes into it, one can look at it further. Or one can push the limits of disability category to include all these people, okay? To all this, include all this kinds of disability.
So, but this point that you're making, if we can just take 1 minute on it, because it's very important what you said, which is defining, right? And I completely take your point that we need a very clear definition and we need to narrow it down. So, I would just want everyone's views that I don't think just adding disabilities would be the right thing, right? Because you can have disabilities and you can be a para-Olympian and a champion, right? So it doesn't prevent you from taking decisions or even earning money. So when we talk, I think, okay, again, I'm open to correction, that we need to define it more narrowly as people who have become incapable of taking decisions on their own, are unaware. So it will have to probably be Alzheimer's and dementia at a certain level, or people in coma, right? So I think we need to define that little narrowly. If anyone has contrary views.
So I can just give you an example of what happens in the living will. Okay? In the living will, if you cannot communicate with your doctor or your healthcare provider, in that case, you then, if you have made a living will, that is, if you have named or given medical power of attorney to a person, and that has been notarized, and then it is supposed to have been registered with the collector's office. In that case, the person who has been given the medical power of attorney will then take all medical decisions for you. But if in this whole process you're in a coma, like you said, and you do recover and you can take your own decision, then that entire process is revoked. I mean, you get back your, you can then make your own decision. That is what is happening in the living will. But this office of public guardian is really very important even for the living will. Because today, even though we've been told that it has to be registered, just like a will, a property will is, none of the offices of the collector know anything about it.
Yeah, even tribunals are not so helpful in case of senior citizens when they have to go for abuse-related issues and all. It is rather faster in family courts to get maintenance than approaching a tribunal, and because collectors have no time, they are loaded with so many things. So that's what is happening. And the other thing I would like to mention is, in case if guardianship is given, there are two siblings. One would want to spend, the other doesn't want to spend. And I've seen the cases like that, where a parent is not in a position to take any call. One child says, I will do and that's enough. The other feels that no, more can be done, but nothing is
So the inheritance is going
Yeah.
That calls for a ministry for geriatric care. We don't have a ministry for geriatric care. We have a ministry for...
So Rekha's idea of ministry separately, and with some funding coming from all these, unclaimed funds, so that government doesn't say, oh, another ministry and where will be funded from, is something we should
Yes, we should.
think
Because we have
about.
ministry for sports, ministry for HRD, women and welfare.
Or ministry part should be the government's job, but some of these offices
We
can
have
be.
NIST in place. We have NIST in place. That's right, isn't it? And so Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment is also there. They have two different sections.
But we have more aging population.
That's true. That's true. But
What's
the other part of
NIST?
National
Institute of
Social
Social
Defense, which is exclusively on working on aging issues.
It's the apex body for the government schemes. All the government schemes on the
Prior to 2014, National Commission was agreed by government. National Commission was seriously, not ministry, actually National Commission. So everything goes in the one single body, nodal agency. That if possible, I think all things will be solved. One single nodal.
I just wanted to suggest, shouldn't there be a medical practitioner like a doctor? Because all these things are related to someone certified and someone who's aware about it, and what is the extent and what is the prognosis. To be part of this structure, the task force or the development as such, because it is all medical.
I agree. In fact, I should ask, now that you're telling me that we are not in touch with this organization which both of you are talking about. Is there some way we can sort of convey these reports and maybe invite them to Bombay? We would be happy to do another discussion session if we can talk to them, and before we all start working on a possible new law, if they're willing to travel here. Non-medical consultants. Yeah, because if they are studying aging, they are the ones who should have been 5 steps ahead of us. Because it's finance related and we've come in from that end, they may not have looked at it at all because nobody looks at the two. And everybody is usually focused on government doing kind of thing. And we are saying, we don't want to be dependent on government and we have our own money. We still need a legal framework to take care of us, right? So, any suggestions on how we take this?
What I feel is that we should work on a framework and develop a note on the framework, what it should cover, what this entire aspect needs to be covered with, and then do consultations with the framework given in advance to groups, because then you can expand the the knowledge base substantially, whether it is lawyers, whether it is a medical fraternity, whether it is a financial fraternity, whether it's asset management, then you should do consultations with them so that the framework is then filled up and we know exactly what should go into the entire process.
Correct, because I think every decision that we talk about will need so much of debate. First, starting with how do you define, then the second question, medical. So the having medical practitioners, I'm sure Dr. Bhattale will tell us, plus and minus when it's organ donation, those boards tend to be negative instead of working positively. So we need to discuss whether we want that, whether it's a delaying thing, then what role of government. So the judge that I talked to said, talk to the district judge. They are apparently the right people. Someone said collector. So we have very little knowledge in this area, and we would really depend on those of you who work in this sector to come up with it. But we'll need a smaller group maybe. And I want to ask you, do you have anything? She's doing her MPhil or PhD in this issue. So
yes, so regarding definition, I have seen different laws of the different countries wherein how they have defined disabled person. So each country has different criteria. Certain like schizophrenia, bipolar, in certain countries those are considered as a it will be included. In certain countries it is not included. So there has to be some definition, correct definition, where the person can be considered as a disabled person, mentally disabled person, physically. Now there are two criteria are there, physically and mentally. Whether now regarding mental, in my thesis I have put one point is there where it's a lacuna to the research, because even in mental condition certain people are so cunning, means they are mentally disabled, but they are so cunning because of their disability. They are trying to grab their siblings' property. But one needs to see that. One needs to see this point also. Just because I'm disabled, I'm mentally disabled, because my research is on that mentally disabled person and their rights in the property and all this is. So one needs to see that also. So basically, as Madam said, that we have to consult doctor, or we have to consult psychiatrist on this, or psychologist also can be helpful for us, because they have a day-to-day, they deal with the patients. So this was one of my professor who was in Bhavan. She pointed out this, Geeta, just don't say about mental disability. Even there are persons who are mentally disabled as per medical term, but then indirectly they are grabbing they are violating others' interest, their sibling interest in their property. So this is also regarding definition, I can say.
Make one small point about studying international law. When we were drafting the POCSO Act, the first draft, we looked at the Canadian law, we looked at American law. We found in America different states had different laws. Then we looked at the British law. And I worked with ECPAT, which is an NGO based in UK on that. And when we were drafting the law, UK asked us, what is the age of consent that you want? UK's age of consent was 11 years. And when we were quite startled that an 11-year-old girl can say, give consent to sexual act, they said, look, it's based on the fact that there is a common education, minimum education standard in all schools, whether it is a public school or what they call a grammar school or private schools. So they have a minimum level. In India, there are vastly differing educational patterns from state to state, from community to community. There are communities which only study in community-funded schools. So there is vast difference in that. I just want to say one simple case of a friend of mine who was a colleague from my Tata days when I was at the Tatas. And he retired. He bought himself a house in a small town near Chennai, Seri Perumbudur. and he and his wife had a only child, a daughter, who wanted to get into medicine. She finally did an MD from physiotherapy. She got married. She went abroad to do a further qualification. She got engaged to a guy who was working over there. And this friend of mine, he took for the wedding. He's my closest pal and my oldest pal. He spent 75% of his entire savings from Provident Fund and everything converted to jewelry for his daughter's marriage. He said, "What do I need for? I have a house already, and we don't have much requirement." So, and his daughter anyway had given him a car and was pledged him financial support for their old age. So, which he kept saying he didn't want, but he converted into his savings into jewelry. She got married. She went to the US. 6 months later, she was driving in a car early morning to go to her hospital where she was working. And on the way, there was ice on the road. She skidded, and at that time she was talking on the speaker system with her mother back home in Chennai. And she skidded off the road. She had a neck fracture, and she died instantly. Now, just before she died, before she went abroad, she had left all the jewelry in his house. And my friend, what he did was that within a week of his daughter leaving all the jewelry, which was huge amounts of 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs of jewelry, with all the money that he had, he went and gave that money, that jewelry, to the daughter's in-laws staying in Chennai. She died 6 months later, and then I got an act. I said, "How are you going to survive? And where's the jewelry? Let's figure out what to do with the jewelry." He told me that the jewelry is with them. So he won't let me talk to them, and he refused to go and talk. So after 1 year of persuasion, he finally went to them. Meantime, their son was getting remarried, and they refused to be married.
Transfer this money to unclaimed for senior citizens. There should be different criteria altogether. Because bank, if you go for unclaimed deposit, bank automatically transfer after something. But for senior citizens, money automatically goes. So many funds, check of funds are for senior citizens, both unclaimed dividend, unclaimed dividend, all these things. There should be some different criteria to transfer this fund to unclaimed for this senior citizens.
That's what I want. The rest.
They can't go to the bank, they can't go to the insurance company, they can't go to anything. So this money goes on increasing only 99% for senior citizens funds. These funds are for senior citizens only.
There is
So
something.
different criteria should be applied before transferring this fund to the banks, etc. They should ask bankers to take different criteria while transferring this money. The bank manager immediately takes a decision. After 4 years, the man doesn't come transfer. But bank should know if he is senior citizen, different criteria should be used for.
No, you make a very good point, but it'll be a long fight, and your point is good, but we should again do it collectively. Because we've been telling the RBI this. In fact, we've also been telling the RBI that your SOPs have to be clear. What you ask from them has to be clear, and you have to issue them. In fact, our research has shown that for the last several years, RBI issues circulars which only say, treat people well, don't harass them, treat people nicely. It has zero meaning, zero legal sanctity. And the branch manager or the officer in charge does whatever he wants to. We have repeatedly brought this to the attention of the RBI, including the Kanungo committee report. I made a presentation. They just don't get it. Even after forcefully making this point, all that Kanungo said is IBA will have, what do they call it, Akshay? They don't call it standard operating, model operating. Model. Even there, they don't want to specify it. Finally, on Friday when I met the governor, I again made the point. I finally said, SEBI is now looking better than you, for heaven's sake. And I said,
great time.
I said, IBA is an unregistered body, not even subject to RTI. What do you mean by asking IBA to do it? The minute you ask a question to IBA, they say we are not even a registered body. But RBI gives the full responsibility, including negotiating bank payments, employee payments to IBA, an unregistered body. Now the question is, in India, how many things will you file a PIL and take to court? So some good sense has to prevail within the RBI. So even if they do SOPs, that'd be first step. For them to do something like treat senior citizens differently will be like a real big fight. But your point is very valid.
National education policy, what the government is doing is there's something called as ABC credit system. So they have created banks where students can deposit all the credits that they are accumulating over the years. So it's just like bank में हम जैसा deposit करते हैं. It's like so whenever students want, they can look at what they have, what credits they have acquired, diploma, degree, like that. So when they are drafting a framework, maybe something of this kind can be suggested, where we have a repository, a bank where, government people are asked to show our assets. So we do that every year. We share our assets. So that is compulsory for government people. So not just government people, but everybody else. Who has, so there should be some system of portal like this ABC Credit Bank where we share our assets and money and things like that, and we nominate maybe a list of 10 people there. Something of this. This is weird as of now, but just I thought of these two things immediately.
No, but these services exist in the private sector. For example, you can leave an email and you can have instructions that it be sent out to the following email addresses. Should I not come and update this for this period? Okay, and that email can have those instructions. So this is a very useful thing. So DigiLocker already exists, right?
Yes.
All that we need is to marry to that DigiLocker, enabling for that information to go out automatically. Right now, anything you want to share out of a DigiLocker, you need to approve.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, very, very valid point. These facilities are available in the private sector. Why not the government offer it for money? They will actually make money.
So when you say available in the private sector, then you can't do it with a depository or a CDSL.
No. So none of the market infrastructure institutions you have. They are not even Indian. We used it for one client. That's how I am aware. Okay, that I think it's a US-based company where you sort of put in this email with a set of instructions, and there is a way in which you keep going back to it and validating it for next 6 months, next 1 year, whatever. Because this is for people who don't want to share.
Pull it out because
I will try.
Because if you're going to put together something, each of these points will have to be put for the, so that we just do a little loose note saying this is what we discussed and look at how to work towards a framework. So it'll have to be part of the. How do we do this? We'll all send some of the points.
Contrary to what you just said, that will take a huge effort. My sense is that anything for senior citizens will go through much easier with both the assemblies, because 80% of them are senior citizens, plus nearly 50% of the government officers in the country are on the verge of retirement.
So all the secretaries.
So I would say that you have a very good chance that it will go through fast.
So we get a good hearing because all secretaries are near retirement.
Absolutely.
Okay? Only thing is they all have pensions. And I keep having to point out that you all are a minority which has a pension which is inflation adjusted. The rest of us don't have it. So their sympathy factor is a little less, but yes, they are all aware at that stage. So we get a hearing. You're right. But nothing happens.
Can I make a suggestion? I'm not an expert, but listening to all the experts over here, I would recommend the Office of Public Guardianship. That document itself is no more than about 40-50 pages. My suggestion would be that at least have a look at it, just scan through it, see what is the scope of it and how it describes it. It may take maybe half a day or so. I tried it, and believe me, I was able to understand a lot of it myself without any help. It was in very plain English. And maybe then you'll be able to relate it better in terms of the specific areas of your expertise and how it will help and what needs to be done. That's the suggestion.
I think,
Yeah.
Rishit, you must be aware of PRS legislative.
Sorry?
PRS.
Yeah,
PRS. So I think they specialize in making wills, drafts. Yeah, I don't know if they can be helpful in taking
No,
this
see,
forward.
eventually, a law draft, I mean, after doing the POXO thing, I learned a lot. No matter who does it, I mean, the POXO thing, we send it to NCPCR, which is the National Committee for Protection of Child Rights. It's a parliament enacted body. But when we did a final draft, it still has to go to the law ministry because the law ministry knows how to draft a law. So eventually, what you will say, just like the Lokpal bill, the Lokpal bill, the Kejriwal did, you know what he did, right? They did the law. But the parliament turned around and said, sorry, we won't take your law because we are the lawmakers. So only we will make our law. Which is when he turned around and said, I'll become
Unfortunately, in the last 10 years, it's all being outsourced to somebody called Vidhi Legal, which is sitting and doing all the drafts of GST and everything else. So, from PRSI, it's moved to an outside NGO called Vidhi Legal. So, earlier law ministry used to say that's our area, but all decimated in the last 10 years. But it will have to get their rubber stamp at the end.
Sujita, I just wanted to make one point. If we look at it from the perspective of the senior citizen and whatever problems that they are going through, the user perspective, then all of them who have property, assets, money, it would be in a bank or number of banks. Is there a mechanism in the bank besides the nomination which can link to the guardianship? Because that is a space, everything official is in the bank account. And there
Not
is
really, only FDs and savings is in the bank account.
The
Everything
post
else is with the depository. No. Post office is not there at all.
Okay.
So, only savings and FDs usually are there. Unless you use the bank's relationship manager and you have bought some other stuff, they may know a little more. So, you open a mutual fund account through them or whatever. But not
Now
only
you can come to know, and if you will look at the SEBI's consultation paper, as she said, they are the most advanced in this area. But as far as adult guardianship is concerned, they are, they have basically left it back to people like us. We have to suggest safeguards.
Anyone who is likely to get such a problem would have a bank account or would have money in places. Is there a central kind of a spot where, like,
see,
they
because
become
property,
promoted?
in fact, if you look at all Indians, their biggest asset is property, right? So property is a whole different ballgame. It's, the least work that has happened. Slowly things are being digitized, but that's the biggest grey area. And that is where most people have 80% of their money. The remaining 20%, it used to be till 2020 in banks and bank FDs and bonds, but from 2020, its huge chunk is in mutual funds. Yeah, and then there may be some insurance.
So the account aggregator is supposed to get you this, but only to you.
Sujeta,
It will not give it to anybody else.
So I think that this is one area which definitely will be very helpful if it can come together.
But this is
I
a
think we
problem that
mentioned
has
the
been
point
resolved.
earlier.
At least the pipeline is laid down. The supply side has still not opened the taps.
So what do we need to do from our side to advocate that this should be done? Because this is something that will be very important for any sibling or anybody, a non-financial person who is stepping into the caregiving role. This should be a very
Allowing other people other than yourself to get access. That access currently isn't there too much. Banks and FDs are reasonably there. Securities and mutual funds are also getting there. Insurance is just joined in. NPS still not. GST has just joined. Income tax may join. EPFO will join. But so let's presume that in the next 1 year or 18 months, that is going to happen, irrespective of what we say in this room. That will happen. Okay? Because that's happening for a different reason. They are basically wanting to make sure credit is easily available, etc. And that's in place, it's moving, there is a momentum.
Centralized information.
Yes, account aggregator. So it's consent based, it comes back only to me. It's working.
My PIL in the Supreme Court is to create a central database, and
But this is
the
not
part that I've
creating
been
a
asking.
central database.
It is individualized to you.
But
It's pulling. It's pulling.
But it should not be difficult to create a centralized database.
They don't want to because it's a security risk to create a
Yeah, but suppose an individual goes and says, if there is a central depository, I would like to register, and I'm willing. These are the places where I have invested, and I'm happy to have that as a registered repository registered for you to consolidate everything. Then that becomes it's possible to bring that in, and you might even be willing to pay a fee for it.
So today that is possible. On paper it is possible because I can open an account with an account aggregator. I can pull this. I can set up a recurring pool, automated recurring pool. I can pay for it in advance, and it will come and sit in that account. The point is, how will somebody else? I am no longer there. Okay. How will somebody else get access?
Which is what we need to address.
Which is what I think we need to
The
address.
issue that I have is an account aggregator is a private guy, right?
No. So what it is an RBI. It is an RBI.
account aggregator?
Licensed
Pardon
by
my ignorance, but I want to know.
So account okay. I'm on the governing council, so I can just try and explain. Account aggregator is basically a blind pipeline. Okay. And there are consent templates that are laid down. I give consent. Please pull. Okay. Please pull any of my bank accounts, any of my mutual funds, any of my securities, any of my insurance policies, my NPS account, one more, EPF will happen. It hasn't yet happened. Okay. Please pull this. Okay. And give it to me. Okay.
Who do I tell?
So the account aggregator is just managing your consent.
No, so she's asking you who is this account aggregator?
So account aggregator there are about, I think today about 18 or 19 entities that have been authorized or licensed by RBI to be an account aggregator. They don't maintain data. All that they do is they send out messages on your behalf asking all banks, this is the mobile number, this is whatever is the agreed upon identifier, they will send out that identifier. These banks or mutual fund companies or NSDL tell them that these are the accounts we have found. Then each of those accounts, I need to give consent. I being the citizen, okay, I need to give consent. Okay, this one's you pull. Okay, none of this is with the account aggregator. It is sitting on my app. When I say I give the consent, the account aggregator carries those consents to these people. They give it in a pre-formatted, agreed upon pre-formatted file, and that again comes back and sits on my app. So this already exists. Not like Sulekha.com. Only you have access to it. Only you have access.
So I want to make a little contrarian point here, okay?
Sure.
Because I don't have that level of comfort about account aggregators. Because the minute I feel anything is licensed to, 14, 15, 20 private companies, I have issues with what they are. For instance, one of the things that we've been banging on to the RBI is that all bank apps are faulty. We have no idea what data they pull. They don't function properly. And, when I raised it again on Friday, the question that I was asked is, but now we can't be micromanaging. I said, all algorithms of SEBI are, SEBI ensures trading algorithms are checked, right? So why should bank apps not be checked? We don't even know what the hell are they pulling out. So if there is a rogue aggregator, we are not, we don't have such great confidence about RBI's ability to supervise. Otherwise, your Punjab and Maharashtra bank would not have collapsed the way it did, okay, and many others. But we really feel that, these 16, if there's a rogue there, what is our recourse? You'll come with a complete blank. And I would have voluntarily agreed to have my data if at some stage in that pipeline it's leaky and somebody else gets access to it. So one of the other issues that we've been fighting all the time is government wants us to be online for everything. The minute you register a car, the minute you take an insurance, the minute you register an NGO, each one of you would be having it as trustees of an NGO, your data is sold the next minute. We registered an LLP before we could get the official letter from the ministry, and I filed a formal complaint leading to an investigation. before we could get our official letter, we started getting bombarded by every bank to say open an account, aapka LLP register ho gaya. So I don't know, these guys, my data is sold, including a guy who makes stamps, rubber stamps, okay? I mean, he has some money to buy that data and send us an email to say, now that you're an LLP, wouldn't you want stamps? It's outrageous, okay? I have cops who are telling me at really senior level, I registered a car, my data is sold, I got calls. So I have serious issues with all of this. Constant organizations like iSpirit, unfortunately working to say, put everything up. So when iSpirit helped us in doing this central database thing, young, bright IT engineer, but I had to point out to him, his first thought was how to make everything mandatory, okay? So make everything mandatory, make nomination mandatory. I said, boss, life is not so simple, as a 23-year-old, super brilliant genius guy who knows programming has not seen enough of life. There are people with 2 marriages, they may have 3 marriages and children. There is no one person they can nominate. But the guy who's, the central figure with 3 wives and 6 children is one person, right? Who does he nominate and why are you making it mandatory? And then they say, forget the will, let's make nomination, the final point because I haven't seen it. Will it go to that guy? And I keep saying, today the government is so enamored with this tech business. So anything that can be put into a box and ticked off, government wants it. And we say, life is not like that, boss. You have to have options and don't take away my choice every time. The second thing, I don't know how many of you get outraged, but the minute they block your demat account, the minute they block your bank account, I think it's a bloody outrage. They're stealing your money. It's your hard-earned money. Even Friday, I had to tell the governor, don't put us in a position where we have to file a class action suit. It requires 100 people to come together because you have no right. And Kanungo committee has said there is no right to freeze your account. But with impunity, lakhs of accounts are blocked every day and senior citizens are worst affected. It is illegal. One case was heard in the Bombay High Court where, even more difficult case, the judges were furious that SEBI had blocked a demat account. I mean, it makes me so hopeful that if 100 of us get together, we can file a PIL against this KYC freezing of accounts. They have no business, but we are putting up with it, And it's all technology allows it to be possible. To kar diya. I find it's I wish more of y'all who deal with people are in the financial sector because we are the only ones who are shouting and the people who are being heard are these iSpirit types. Yeah, yes, they are brilliant. They understand technology. They're all below 30. They know everything but haven't seen life. And they have no practical examples. They're not dealing with what each of you has dealt with in your own areas, but they are the ones who get heard. They are the ones who get invited.
But the Aadhaar, which is all high-tech in terms of security and all that, they face problems because there are senior citizens whose fingers are worn out.
Exactly.
And they have cataracts and they have all kinds of eye problems and they can't be verified. They simply can't be verified.
And George dresses every day sending us stuff, we're carrying it. The poor labor, their fingerprints are sort of just worn out. And you have no Aadhaar authentication. The minute you go 2 hours out of Bombay, you don't have proper connectivity. So these guys, Adivasis and others, walking 10 kilometers to come to a point where you have internet connectivity and we're living with it. I mean, Aadhaar is now 10 years old, boss. Mandatory Aadhaar. Because we don't care about the poor. Sorry.
Next. We were talking about pulling the data. I think maximum for 10 years data may be available. The classic example is Supreme Court orders to banks to pay one type of option to resign its bank employees, resign it. And banks are asking salary slip, joining date, resignation date, and a PPF, etc., all those things. Banks do not have that. If that is the case, how banks are going to share the data with central depository or any such authority?
To add to your point, while opening any account of any kind, it's online. The minute you want to close it, whether it's a demat, whether it's insurance, they make you stand in
That's
queue.
commercial.
I mean,
That's commercial.
no, this is nonsense. It's illegal. But just because we
Even
are
for a
helpless-
mobile phone, it's the same.
Yeah, because
You cannot
100
close
of
a
us
mobile
are
phone
not
report.
filing a case, and that legal system, sorry to say, works very slowly. We're just putting up with it. We're like cattle, Every day there is a rule which is just whipping us, and we put up with it. Why the hell can they? And you think a SEBI regulator or RBI cannot, with one line order, change this overnight? I mean, it requires a one-line directive saying none of you. And incidentally, Colombo Committee has accepted this. What I've said is technology is a two-way street. If you can open it, you can shut it with the same technology. They have accepted it. They have put it in the report. I'm told yesterday 80% of Colombo is accepted. This is not accepted. People are still complaining.
There's another issue of the banks freezing the account because it's not operated. Senior citizens may have 4 or 5 bank accounts, but they may operate 2. But the other banks which are not operated,
Becomes dormant.
then you have to go to home branch and open it.
Correct.
And it is really trouble for a senior person to go and open to the home branch. Maybe that person is bedridden. So we have to go to home branch, and otherwise we have to take an appointment from the bank officer. He has to come, see the patient who is on a bedridden, then only they open the bank account. Otherwise it's frozen.
And then also
The
have
fines
fines
like
like
They can't do it.
and they refuse to come at home.
They don't.
There is some
They refuse
people
to come back.
doorstep banking for people with disabilities and senior citizens. But the bank says we just don't have manpower.
Yes.
Yes.
We just don't have people to do it, and they are
don't do it.
actually.
Whenever I'm being a
And
banker,
they
I tell
only-
that the technology they are using is not consumer centric. That is my opinion.
It's just
I am
a
experiencing
But
it.
Ketna, they have all the money if you have a crore in the account. Then there's no problem. They come to your house. No doorstep banking is an issue if you have crore in the bank.
So,
And
just
they
from
actually
the
charge for this.
no, so
It's not free.
the point about account aggregate, since I'm a little involved with it, is that it is a blind channel. The data that enters it is encrypted. The data that leaves it is encrypted. They themselves, and they are not allowed to store it at all. Okay, and even if they store it in violation, it's encrypted. Okay, it gets so the point of failure is when they deliver it in the app. That app can be anything that you choose. That need not be part of the account aggregator framework. It can be any app of your choice.
So my point is, who is supervising the pipeline? Who is supervising the app? RBI doesn't want to supervise existing bank apps. Anytime you're opening the ICICI bank app, it's buffering and saying you can't do it just now.
Fair.
Every single app is, and we make points. We don't just rant about it. We call them, we fight, we point out, and it requires us every time to go to the highest level at each bank before they tell their tech person to listen. In fact, I even said we should have a contest on, usability and user interface. I mean, this is basic, right? They go to the best IT firms. Look at the user interface. We know the MD of a bank who proudly spent half an hour showing us his app, and we said, but we don't find it as usable and exciting as you're making it out to be. We're using it, we find it's not intuitive. Now, who listens? I still managed to get a meeting where I managed to say things, and quite bluntly, into the top man's ear. Who gets an opportunity? And I'm sure it went in one ear and out the other. It's not that anything's going to happen. The only time it's going to happen is 100 of us get together, file a class action suit after sending all these things out. And I wish some of you would come in as NGOs at that time, and we should file it. Because it's the only way to end the KYC nonsense, or come to the bank for closing accounts. All these points that you are making also have to go to court.
If you take up this issue, the Moneylife, that banking facility for general public and senior citizens, that is a very burning issue. People are much unhappy with this banking facility. So you can take some.
We have. That's why they don't like me, because I not only take it up, I take it up extremely aggressively to the point of rudeness, because politeness has been happening 14 years. We are around for 14 years. So I finally tell them, I've written to you so many times, Now, if I'm very blunt, you will have to listen to it. I was given a whole hour to talk to Kanungo committee. I'm quite happy to say 90% of our suggestions were accepted. Point is, implementation is another ballgame, right? So in every place, they've accepted it. They are not implementing it. So hardly 30% is implemented. They claim that they've implemented 70%. Now, how do you fight ombudsman scheme? Disaster. For the last 7 years or 8 years, we've been at it, going on and on. All that happens is we make enemies. They don't like it because after a while you sort of escalate and you get nasty and tell them, here are examples.
The KYC, my own account, they have stopped. Actually, I had given the forms, KYC everything, but they have stopped my bank account.
So you become partner with her.
No, so I'm telling you, KYC, there's no point. We have to do a class action suit. So sometime we should get together. It's a lot of work, but we need to do that. That's the only thing. Because again, yesterday I was told, it is Money Laundering Act. So what? Yeah? Even under Money Laundering Act, the Finance Ministry has no right to freeze my money. Okay? Unless you have reasonable doubt and you think that my account is used for something nefarious, you can't say just because I didn't renew KYC, you're freezing it. Any court will throw it out, but we need to go there and file a class action. Because I don't think this will even be a pill. So it will need class action.
So, in the Money Laundering Act, they have done quantity, right? If you look at, there is no stockbroker in the room. In the stockbrokers are supposed to report every person's transactions as suspicious transactions if the value of those transactions exceeds the reported income. So suppose he's reported his income as 10 to 15 lakhs. Okay. Now who's a trader? Somebody who's a trader will do that almost every day because that's the gross value. That has to be reported as a suspicious transaction. The point is FIU then takes actions against stockbrokers and there are multiple actions and then they tout this as achievements on PNLA and that gives us the higher rating. You would have read in the papers that we've got a higher rating.
No,
I wrote about this.
Only way to end it is to go to court.
I agree.
Only then do they have to come and justify. So simple thing like your classification. If you are in low risk, you have to do your KYC once in 10 years. I'm sure each one of you is doing it every 3 years, right? So 3 years, you're not high risk. So one fight we have had, including we filed RTI also, to say, tell us how you have classified us. So there's one particular guy, his friend, Nunes, who demanded through RTI that tell me what is the classification and why am I being made to do it. As a revenge, the bank has frozen his account. Then he went to the ombudsman. The ombudsman has rejected his claim. So the person who fights can, get vindictive action. So it has to be done collectively. So one person fighting, Avinash Nunes is willing to do it, but I think most of us will not want the risk. So unless we do it as a class, different sets of people coming together, the courts will have to hear us.
Actually, we have been fighting for so many years, 2010, for getting listed in the manifesto first. We thought going to parliament, meeting for politicians is very difficult. So what we thought, if it's manifesto, so slowly it will become part of the law or some program. So this time we took a really aggressive step and we wrote to BJP, Congress, MNS, Association, everybody.
Most of the parties.
And we personally met also and did a press conference. While fortunately, all the parties had one page on senior citizens. There was only one line earlier. Yes. And one of the scheme is 70 plus Ayushman. We wanted 60 plus, but they made 70 plus. And Congress had the concession, citizen concession to be restored. So many things happened actually. But again, it was joint action company, not Silverine, not LP, not FESCOM, everybody together. And we made it and we used media.
Yes.
Media, Times of India, Indian Express, Lok Sabha, Maharashtra, everybody was on it. But what they got it and they just published so many reports, immediate Twitter and social media. It happened.
So
how did you decide 70?
No, 70 because there's a gap 60 to 70 now. Like in Maharashtra they do 80 plus. So
my guess is
arbitrary.
My guess is that they took 70 because just 2 years ago The life expectancy went up to 71. So they know that it is only 1% of the senior citizens. That's why they took 70.
10 years.
It didn't make sense to me. Why 70 was chosen? Look, to be honest, in this country, to be poor, illiterate, and old is a crime. It's a crime. It's a crime.
They have taken out this railway subsidy. Use the poor people. In 2020. It has been 4 years now. I wrote an RTI before there was a question was in Parliament. They said we can't give.
Another important point which I like to make is that for the past 3 years, the Senior Citizen 2007 Act, which is actually in place, and there are many tribunals. Okay? I says over the years, probably something comes up. Post that thing is implemented, the person, the department, or whichever body is implementing, should be people with, some kind of a know-how, or some kind of a knowledge, or some kind of a responsibility. Because the tribunal which I work with, if you go to any tribunal, there are like 200, 300 cases of, backlog cases going on in the tribunal. Okay, and with whatever act, with whatever empowerment the tribunal has, the collector or the deputy collector or the SDO, DM, who's basically overlooking it, doesn't have the emotion or the know-how or the inclination towards actually solving a problem of the senior citizen. So, two brothers are fighting, one brother has taken kabja of another brother's house along with his daughter, divorced daughter, along with his wife, okay, under the pretext of helping him. Now, what the tribunal is telling him, make care of, sir. So, this is not the solution. Wherein the 2000 Act, little bit of what I know, says that, if I am a senior citizen, if I want to stay, with dignity and somebody takes over my house, he or she can be asked to leave. Okay, but in this, but in this case, the tribunal says make care. How is this possible? And his brother's daughter always threatens him with POSCO case because she's moved in with her daughter. So the tribunal cannot do anything, and both the brothers are senior citizens. So it's a dead end. He's like 75, 80. He doesn't have another 10 years, I don't know, to go and fight with the Supreme Court. So, if a tribunal or if a body is set, that body should be empowered to take logical decisions. And who's sitting in the body? If you go to the tribunal in Old Custom House, there's some officer promoted to some level, highly corrupt. Sorry, I'll specifically use this word, highly corrupt. Trying to get his promotion done through some high-end cases because he's got some rich cases coming in, people from Dubai filing cases, so he probably use his own vested interest to come up with some personal benefit. So who will be monitoring the monitor?
There is a system, HCC was right, because there is no ministry and there is no national commission, there is no single agency. Only one IS officer looking after 149 million people. So there is there is a clause in Maintenance Act and policy where it should have national level senior citizen committee, council, state council, district council and tribunal council, and who will be the member? Like legal, NGO, not there. Because
right now
there is no ministry,
is
there is no commission to push it.
As a handicap kind of an organization. Like, for example, I had a call yesterday from some Ghaziabad. The son somehow, signed a fake document and got the property on his name, and he's thrown out his father. Now I had to refer him to some collector's office which is running from pillar to post. We have particular format. Every tribunal has a different format. South Bombay Tribunal has a different format. Bandra has a different format.
One format.
They should have one format and different format, and the senior citizen has to apply. Now, if a senior citizen is not in the capacity to come to the court, then probably an NGO can.
Third party.
Yeah, but then the hearing, but then his case to come on board will take another 6 months. What we say that it should be handled in 90 days, it doesn't happen. 90 days. I have a list of cases where in 6 months they have just got a notice.
And then people go to High Court. The son will go to High Court.
Writ petitions.
Writ petition.
So, but then if the solution, if there is an act, 2000 parents, I've got positive acts also. I've removed, one daughter-in-law had kabja out the house, successfully removed. But every place, like the rural India will have a different policy, and the DM will be high-handed DM who will not listen to the complainant, every state, we know how our states function. So, if the act or any act in the near future is implemented, the way it should be, carried out should be totally monitored. It cannot be at the whims and fancies of the magistrate who sits there. And who's going to question the magistrate?
So they filed a writ petition. So
Sorry.
the
Yeah, but the senior citizen doesn't have the time.
Yes,
Your age is not on his side. If he's 75, 80, how do you think, why is this tribunal set up?
Do you guys use social media effectively?
To a certain extent. Not very effective.
Also the energy levels, the time, the distance, it's very
But
difficult
tribunal says it can't be appealed in any code of law. There is a clause. It can't be appealed in any code of law.
No, it can be. It can be appealed.
No, it is written.
Yeah, this is just a thought which is different from what we are talking about as our core thing. I think all of us should figure out a way of using social media much more effectively so that we act as relay something. So you post something, we should have a sort of informal group where our own followers are there and we sort of amplify and replicate. Because you look at railways or whatever, at least under this government, they seem to pay attention to social media much faster. Okay, yeah, lots of complaints. I mean, you'd be surprised, but even kachra on the street, I put a picture, it gets done the next day. Okay, very next day, I think give me pictures back. So we have to. I mean, we should have a separate meeting on this, but we should all work. We should probably get someone to do a lecture also. So those of you who don't have account should open it. We had done one in Moneylife. We got the girl who handles the police account, she does a brilliant job, and now BMC. So we got her to do a talk for us. I'm sure a video is there. Akshay would be happy to share it with you all. But let's, this is one thought, that the way to put pressure, I keep saying we should go to court, but can't keep going to court and class action.
We can knock it straight here that the judiciary has their own system. The bar council takes care of the lawyers. The most important segment. Why don't you start a litigants council? You should have an office in the Supreme Court of India saying that we are not being heard. We are the most important. It's because of us that you are heard. Form it. Let us see. Get the right people involved, because everything is ultimately possible. We are the last end. The law is supposed to be for us.
Absolutely.
But finally, there is nothing. Either way, you are losing. That seems to be.
And you would notice, one of the things that he's been pushing so hard is all this legal transcriptions and transparency. You look at what is happening the minute social media shows that judge who made those obscene comments about Pakistan and a woman lawyer, the 5-member bench of the Supreme Court was constituted the next day. Only and only because it went viral on social media. So, I mean, we should all have a thought and a plan about this, because I can't see whether it's a judge or the police or the BMC, that is what they're paying attention to. And ministries, of course.
Yeah, we should probably, the problem is that NGOs, and then what I did now, what I'm doing, right? I've created a parallel channel called Defeat Dementia. It's my own personal initiative, because I personally interact with so many dementia patients and family, and I see with the government just raising their hands. So I've started this own Insta and YouTube and various channels to basically talk about this particular problem, right from awareness to care and advocacy. So probably a surrogate kind of a voice, which basically hammers. Let's see, if I do, there'll be somebody coming after me. You do, somebody coming after me. Maybe a surrogate kind of a social media campaign which talks about one particular cause.
Also,
Something
we
this
need
way.
to rope in more young people, because here what I can see is all our senior
Except her.
citizens. I think just one.
And him.
But we need more youth voices also too, because we are talking about awareness.
So we need the voice to be constant. Youth or elderly, it should be every day. Like we celebrate World Alzheimer's Day on 21st of September, and that's the end of the story. We
You
need
have
to
to
building.
find youngsters who are interested.
Yeah, but that is something
we don't.
Which we find it difficult.
What challenges we face with working with seniors? Maybe it's like marketing Amway. You should keep on adding 10% every month, every year. What happens? We all grow old, we die. Many is like Kijawadi, they're all the leaders. So many people just gone. We were a fighter. Now we are left alone. We can't fight. So we need to keep on adding, like young people, like keep on adding 10% every month, every year to our membership. Otherwise, we'll all go. The leadership will go, and they will not. Nobody there to fight.
No, but this is only not
So-
our issue, no? Because everybody's issue.
So young people should be told what is for my future. When I say what is my pension, what is my hospital, where is my old age home, where is my care, where is my dementia center, a young person fight but they are not ready to listen. So we have to talk in their way, in the music concert, in the social media. They will listen. They are listening somewhere where.
But let's start now, no? Yes, what I'm saying is let's start now. See, like AMFI does, for mutual funds. Let's create a friend of senior citizens.
Yes.
You are the NGO that deals with senior citizens. Start, we will all join in, and you have a name like something that doesn't point to your NGO or to you. Have friends of senior citizens, something neutral kind of name. We'll all join in, and like she said, we'll all amplify all those issues through social media. That's a starting point. It could be a starting point for which will inevitably also get consultations in. People want to know more, and that brings in more people. Let's just start that. I mean, all of you go to the Dignity Foundation, all of you start. We'll all join in. एक neutral बनाओ बस. Don't point to yourself or to the organization.
So I have discovered that younger people get interested only at one time when they are handling their parents, and if they are young enough and the parent has passed away and they're going through the hell of succession, they wake up, and that's the time they Google, they connect with us, they find our past articles and whatever. But within a year, once their problem is resolved, they are out and forgotten again. So how do you get anyone in a movement? I can't.
What we also do, like we also do it. Like we have NSS, NCC, they come to us every year. Some batch of students, 100, 200, they do some project. In Bharati Vidyapith, MB colleges, social worker colleges.
This can help.
There are people every year, 150 people coming every year to all NGOs. So they are a chain, and there is a project for them. They have to do it.
So shall we then close? Thank you everyone. So we take this forward. Akshay is going to be the point person. We work on the framework, and how do we do it? You will forward us things, or should we get in touch with you and get whatever details and then work on a framework?
Our point to share, and we make Rishi will make some draft, and she will send an international law. Or paragraph for each of them.
I mean, if you are serious about this particular issue, can you have a WhatsApp group which basically WhatsApp? Yeah, writing an email or whatever, I don't know. But I think, if you're talking about digitally being connected, WhatsApp is the best.
Email group is better. Email group.
The only reason that email might be better is that sometimes you may personally not have the time. You may have a colleague who may be looking at it, right? So WhatsApp will come
all connected.
Yeah. So let's do some initial work. We'll, do a broad draft, maybe a framework. One thought I have is maybe at some stage we can try and find some interns who will help us. We talk to people if anyone has suggestions. It requires a lot of work before we come to. I can see at least 3 months before we come to a stage where we have something to discuss again, right? If we can, in the meantime, find an intern who will do some hard work for us, we'll try and get that. If you have any recommendations and suggestions, tell us, we'll try and work with them. Yeah? But we'll come back and we'll share a note with everyone, but do give us suggestions of how to take it forward. And if right at this stage we can involve people who are working in aging and whatever, get them at least sensitized, send them the stuff that we have. All of you, it's all public, it's not about us. You can share whatever resources, ask us to give you more of our reports, you can share that. And let's start getting them, because we do a next meeting if we want them to participate. Unless they're aware of it from now, they want to ask us questions. Even today, we are happy to engage to reach that point. I think, thank you so much. We will meet again. Yeah?
Thank you so much.